just been a whirlwind of activity, some good, some not so good, as you can imagine. But we're here today to celebrate Jack Muckstadt's 80th birthday, which is my understanding was yesterday. So he's not actually, he's 80 plus a day today. And what's interesting about that is I thought about we were going to have this on the birthday. And then I was told that Cornell was having its homecoming that weekend, and I needed to move it to Sunday. Well, it turns out that Cornell changed when homecoming is. I didn't know that until I already planned the event. So even though we avoided homecoming altogether, it turns out homecoming is in a couple of weeks, not this week. We could have had it yesterday. So I apologize for it being on Sunday morning, but that's the story. All right. So my quick story that I started to tell about Jack Muckstadt is that I actually met Jack's good friend, Dennis Severance, before I met Jack. Because my first academic job was at the University of Michigan, and Dennis Severance and I were on a project together. And Dennis told stories about having trained at Eglin Air Force Base while he was doing some, I guess maybe it's Army training. And Jack also had done a similar kind of training down at Eglin Air Force Base. Well, Eglin Air Force Base is in my hometown of Knightsville, Florida. So that connection immediately rose to the top of my interest. And here's what I can say about Jack, which is also true about Dennis, is that they're both very curious people. They want to know more, as most researchers do. They want to know and keep delving into areas deeper and deeper. So my understanding was that Jack and Dennis both trained there, and there's a time during the training where you are on your belly, crawling on the ground with live fire going overhead. And this is the one time where we do not want to have you be curious. So my understanding is you kept your head down and you got through the training. And that's my story. I wasn't sure if it was true, but now it's been confirmed by at least 2 people that it is true. It's
true.
Okay. All right. So
it's a life's lesson. Keep your head down and keep moving forward.
Right on. So we have a lot of people going to talk today. So I'm going to be brief. One of the things I want to mention, this is the first part of the agenda that I sent you earlier this week, and that is that Jack has always been a person who see if I can get this right, is supportive of the Master of Engineering program and has done so monetarily and as a professor. Spent a lot of time working on industrial projects with students who are Master of Engineering students as well as undergraduate students for that matter. So this year, he decided to endow that effort, and if I can get my slide to change, through the Jack and Linda Muckstadt Graduate Award for ORI Master of Engineering Excellence. And so first of all, I did not know that professors had $1 million to give, but Jack somehow scrounged up his pennies and was able to give this $1 million. And so I just want to congratulate him and thank him for that gift. I have a little button for applause.
You have to know, Mark, that that's simply a reflection of all the people that are on the screen and many others. And the things that I got out of the program as a consequence of the interactions that I had with all of you folks. It's a great pleasure for me to have had that opportunity. And I thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Jack. So is there anything else you wanted to say about that, or is that what you wanted to say? Because I do have a little time for you to say whatever you want to say about.
No, just go on. Let's just move on, because there's so many people here, and I know Catherine's got to catch an airplane.
Aha, I did not know that, but
no.
Okay. So here's the agenda for today, at least part of it, and it goes on for a couple of pages. You just heard the welcome piece, and you just heard Jack's quick response, but I would prefer to have people that know Jack a little bit better than I do to give a brief history. So I've asked Catherine Caggiano to take over, and I'll stop sharing my screen if she wants to share hers, but just to speak.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. And first, happy birthday, Jack. I am not getting on a plane later, just for all of you, right? In-person teaching and travel aren't mixing these days, but I do have a conflict with another meeting that I'm running. But this was absolutely top of the list this morning. Those of you who just saw Mark's agenda saw that this is supposed to be the history of Jack in 10 minutes. Now, that's just not possible, as you all know. Certainly, I think it's just a testament to Jack that I see so many people here, right? We're approaching, 80 people. This is going to go up into the hundreds. That everybody, I think, has their own history with Jack. So there's not the history. I think there can only be sort of a history. So I just want to share with you this morning a little bit about, my history with Jack and what I've learned over the years. So my first, I guess, direct interaction with Jack came back in 1995 when I was a PhD student at the time, I think in my second or third year, and Jack was the school director. Now, PhD students know that for the first year or two, you just sort of keep your head down. You try to avoid all like faculty. Certainly you try to avoid the school director. So I had actually never quite come into direct contact with Jack yet, other than a hello, perhaps in the hall. But at the time, I was ORGA president, Operations Research Graduate Association president, which meant that I was in charge of filling the Coke machine and collecting the money that came from it. Now, at that time, there was actually some unrest among the PhD students. We were, concerned over weighty matters like, should we spend the Coke machine profits to buy new equipment for our intramural baseball team when not everybody played baseball, right? Was this going to be fair to all of the students? So, things that are important to PhD students at the time. Well, in my role as liaison with, with the department, I wanted to talk to Jack about this and, try to sort of let him know what was going on. Several other students had said, well, you're the president, you just have to tell people what to do and make a decision. So Jack kind of sat me down and gave me what I think was probably my first lesson, and a very valuable one, on active listening. And just said, look, if you want to be effective, you have to listen to people. You have to acknowledge their concerns, and you have to acknowledge their concerns as valid. You really can't just dictate that. Now, that was something that stuck with me, and that conversation actually set off, I guess, a chain reaction, which I'm sure many of you have similar stories of your first interaction with Jack, and then that led to ... so many other things, as it did with me. And it really, I think, changed the course of my life in a lot of ways. So after that, I think it was in 1997, I ended up TAing for Jack and Peter in design and manufacturing systems, a course where I think I probably learned more than the students at that time, and really got my first dose in what it meant. What did practical operations research really mean? After that, after I graduated, after a stint in Silicon Valley, I came back to Cornell. And again, that's when I really began working with Jack in earnest on supply chain and inventory models that led to me heading to the University of Wisconsin in 2001 to teach at the business school. But perhaps most, profoundly, about 14 years ago, when Mark Eisner, who I'm delighted to see here today as well, decided to retire as MEng director, it was really Jack who sort of first put a bug in my ear and hinted that maybe I should think about coming back to Cornell and directing the MEng program there. And I think Victoria Averbrook, who's on here as well, will also agree that, yeah, Jack probably put a bug in her ear as well about coming back to Cornell to help lead MEng. Now, first, this was just a hint. And then over the course of the next several months, it became a hard sell. And make no mistake, hockey tickets were involved in this whole transaction. So, okay, after 25 years, I did come back, of course, in 2007, and have been directing the Master of Engineering program ever since, and am so profoundly grateful for everything that Jack has done, not only for me, but for the MEng program. And of course, this latest generous endowment for MEng. So after 25 years, right, in true Jack fashion, you kind of might ask me the question, so what did I learn from all this, right? Because that's what Jack likes to do. Well, I've learned a lot of things, and in fact, probably the most profound have nothing to do with supply chain or mathematical modeling or operations research. The things that I've learned and the things that I've learned about Jack, probably the most profound, and I'll just mention a couple, and the others are really corollaries of this first thing, which is that Jack puts people first. He always has, ever since I have known him, and he meets people where they are. Whether that means you are a PhD student trying to figure out how to spend the Coke money, not that kind of Coke, Coca-Cola. By the way, that same machine still exists. It's somewhere in the department. So that has stood the test of time for those of you joining. Whether that's an undergraduate student. And I know there are many of you on here who are undergraduates at Cornell who had the experience of walking into Jack's office with just a quick question and then leaving 3 hours later after some sort of life transforming kind of experience. Or whether you're a colleague who really wants to chat about life and needs a clearer head perhaps than yours at times about what to do or how to think about things. So that's the second thing. Jack meets people where they are. And the third, I think, which is also true, is that it's absolutely clear, and Mark mentioned this up front, right? Jack's curious, but I think he thrives not just from collaboration, but from community. And that's something that you see throughout not only his career, but throughout his life, throughout his family and friends, that Jack and Linda believe in building things that last and making people's lives better, whether that is endowing a generous fellowship for MN students, whether that is building an amazing organ for a community church, or whether that's just being there for us all when we need him. You know, in January, when I first heard about Jack's accident, it was about an hour after it happened. I remember this very clearly because I got a text from Jamal, of all people. I have no idea how Jamal knows these things, but he always seems to know things first. I was sitting in my office in Rhodes Hall, and I had kind of one of those time compression sort of moments. So a lot of people talk about, oh gosh, things happen where your life flashes before your eyes. Well, in this case, you know, it was really something else flashing before my eyes. It was really kind of realizing the profound impact that somebody else has had on the arc of your life. And I remember just sort of sitting in my office there for several minutes, stunned, before I got on the phone and started calling people who knew Jack, people who loved Jack, and just talking, because we needed to talk. And we were also very profoundly affected. So I realized then, you know, certainly not for the first time, but perhaps never so vividly as I had before, just how lucky I was to have somebody like Jack, have a mentor like Jack in my life. So I doubt anybody here would argue that 2020 has just been a hell of a year in so many ways, but that's just all the more reason to celebrate today. And that's just all the more reason that I think, like everybody else who's on here, is so profoundly grateful for the opportunity to celebrate the people who really matter most to us. So Jack, happy birthday. We love you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure, Catherine, whose life was transformed more in these 3-hour sessions, the students or mine?
I think it probably was, I think you would get arguments. You would get a lot more arguments that it was theirs, but I am
not sure.
You've always
in the aggregate, Catherine, I think it was me who has changed most.
Well, Jack, I can't speak for everybody else here. I can only share my own story, and I hope over the course of this morning that many more of you will have the opportunity to share a little bit about your own story, because I think it's important I would love for you to hear just about the impact that you've had on other people, which has been tremendous. With that, I'm actually, is Dennis on? I see so many different people. I'm hoping Dennis is on. I'd love to pass it over to Dennis Severance, because I know Dennis has a few things he'd like to share as well.
If Dennis is here, it's the earliest he's been up in months.
Well, I don't see his name listed on the participant list. I have emailed him. So I will just keep it moving, rearrange a bit, and if he's able to get on, then we'll circle back to him. The second person to speak then will be Peter Jackson, and he's going to talk about the influence Jack has had on, well, partially on him and also on the education of our students.
Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Have to get this thing out of the way. And we'll maximize this. Okay, so greetings from Singapore. Like Catherine, I have lots of little stories I could tell about Jack. I think when she's talking about the first time of meeting him, I'll have to tell my first meeting with Jack. It was over the phone. I was at Stanford. And I had sent my CV, my application, to the business school at Cornell, and they didn't really hear back from them. But then I got this call from this Professor Muckstadt, who was, explained that the CV had come over to the OR department, and they were interested in talking to me. And at that point, I told them that I really had decided not to pursue an academic career, and I was looking for other options at that point. I was finishing up my PhD at the time, but was really thinking of going elsewhere. And that's my dad tells there's the old book of the sale begins when the customer says no. So I began to experience the salesmanship of Jack Muckstadt. And needless to say that, within the hour, I was getting quite excited about the possibilities of coming and working with this gentleman at Cornell. So that's where it began. I had close to 40 years of working closely with Jack, and we still talk on Wednesday mornings. The research projects continue. So it's just been a marvelous time working with him. So I was asked to talk about his impact on education. So I pulled together this slide if you've had a chance to look at it. I came into the picture at the beginning of the 80s. So I think before the 80s, Jack, and I hear stories of the lectures he gave back in the 70s. He had very neat chalkboard writing, and he would have planned out his use of the blackboard very carefully, and would convey his notes from paper up onto the chalkboard very carefully. But Jack tells me that sometime in the 80s, he stopped and turned around and started asking questions of the students. And the students who are on the line now probably remember that was likely a terrifying experience to be put on the spot by a question from Jack. But his goal was the Socratic method of guiding people to insights through questions. So his style of teaching changed in the 80s. I don't know if we can pinpoint exactly when that happened. But what I'm documenting here is his impact and involvement in what we were calling experiential learning, which really began in the late 70s, early 80s. We met a gentleman, John Jenner from IBM, who had created something that he called the operations game. It was a mainframe computer game on managing a flow within a semiconductor plant. And we could see how powerful a teaching tool that was. So Jack persuaded the IBM Corporation to give Cornell money, and he used that money to hire Barbara Spang, actually. Barbara came and took that mainframe computer program, rewrote it in, I think, Pascal, the first version was. It's a tribute to that we used that game, I think, for 30 years. Every year we used that operations game. But Jack saw the value that this, the microcomputers, the IBM PC came out at that time. And both he and I recognized the power that was going to have on education. So he went into it wholeheartedly. When he was director, he arranged for the faculty to all have microcomputers and to build labs where we could have microcomputer labs and have students come in and have experiences on these computers. And so you see over the years a progression of these cases that Jack got involved in developing, and this eager army at the top there. Russ Rushmeyer wrote the distribution game. Then at some point, Dennis Severance came in and said, what you guys are doing is really great, but it's just missing the financial piece. And so that's what Dennis brought into it. And then Dave Murray brought in these, the multiplayer with expert systems and very professional interfaces on these software packages. And Jim Rappold had, really creative spreadsheets and dynamic ways of interacting with data. And then Jack got a great kick out of writing case studies, which was sort of unheard of in the engineering college, to be using case studies. But they had characters. There's a Jackson and a Mukstad. There's a everybody here has their name in one of his cases, and there were wonderful stories that he was telling to get across the ideas. And you get a taste there of the rich variety of experiences that came out of these collaborations. One of the reasons he made it work is he went to companies and persuaded them that this was important for their future, and they paid handsomely to get these experiences created, and they were used with their employees. Accenture had many of their consultants go through the Nova game and some of these other ones. So all of this, and there's several millions of dollars that came in to make all of this happen. And that wouldn't have happened without Jack's salesmanship along the way. So all of us, the eager army, were really inspired by working with Jack. We're proud to have our names attached to some of these experiences. And me personally, Jack has been a mentor and a friend and a buddy. I think the carpet between his office and my office is the most well-worn path in Rhodes Hall. So the only time his salesmanship failed was when I decided to come to Singapore. He tried hard, but I couldn't pass up this opportunity. So thank you, Jack. It's been a blast. And if you visit my website, you see that we keep developing these games. So keep it up. Thank you.
So let me just comment. There's no person who has had more impact on me in a professional way than Peter Jackson. The collaboration we've had over these few decades was a phenomenal time for both of us. I'm an only child, and Peter was like my brother. I really appreciated all the times we had together. Now, Peter also tells the story about when he went off to Stanford and, was getting his PhD, and his brother was in sales. And Peter would say, well, I'm going to be a professor, or, I'm going to PhD, but my brother's in sales. What he found out later on, he was in sales.
We're all in sales, Jack.
We're all
this
in
is
sales. That's right. Yeah, but Peter was,
If you can't sell a lecture, the students go to sleep. If you can't sell a proposal, you don't get funded. If you can't sell a paper, it doesn't get published.
right.
It's sales.
Peter
Thank
is,
you.
Peter is one of a kind. He really is a marvelous human being. And I just, and it's one of the blessings of life to have had an opportunity to work with him.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. That was great. So I just want to read a couple of the chats that have been sent. Jack, I'm not sure if you're monitoring. I am monitoring. So Ted Gumer, Gumer, says, we all love you, Jack. Such a joy to have you in our lives. Ricardo Cohn says, happy birthday, Jack. You were the most influential professor I had during my Master of Engineering. Loved your inventory theory class and your out-of-class comments, always poignant. Vidyadhar Kulkarni, first he reminds you he's Radhika's husband. But anyway, he says, I remember taking your MN's level inventory course and still remember your lectures very clearly. Enjoy your 80th birthday. Lydia Wong says, I remember that inventory course very well too. This is, okay, she's an MN student of 2001. It left a real impression. Thank you and happy birthday. So we'll continue on. I want to say one thing before we move on. I'm not reading everyone who's speaking's bio because they're all amazing. It is listed in the agenda, but yeah, just a list of accolades from some of your former students and colleagues, just amazing, just to even read as a professor. But I'm not going to do that here because it'll take too long. So the next person to speak is Bob Kaplan from Harvard, and he's going to talk about your influence on research. So Bob, are you? Good. You have the power to share.
Bob, I think you're muted.
Let me unmute
You
you.
got it. I was on mute. So I just wanted to check the sound is okay.
Yes.
That's good. Thumbs up. So as you can see on this cover slide, I was a PhD student with Mark Eisner, also on this call. But I left Ithaca in 1968, which preceded Jack's arrival by about a half dozen years. So unlike almost everyone else on the call, I never really had a chance to study with or be a colleague of Jack, and I just got to know him through the ORIE Advisory Council, initially with Shane Henderson and David Schmoys, and thank you, Mark, for your willingness to step up and be a terrific leader as well. And so I did get a sense of what several of you have already talked about his generosity and his passion for the Master's Engineering program, and his warmth and friendliness. But Mark asked me actually to talk about his research, and I was kind of wondering, well, why was I selected to do this? So I had to go back and look at Jack's Vita, and as you'll see a couple of the papers, and I realized actually, even though we never overlapped physically, we overlapped considerably at an intellectual basis. That we both did dynamic programming on stochastic inventory models, and both of our early, we had early papers that built upon and extended classic papers by Herb Scoff, who was at Yale at the time. And as Mark said to me, Jack has a keen interest in healthcare and healthcare applications, and I did too, have too, for the last 10 years. Then I realized actually what the real overlap is that, Jack, I've actually had 5 more months of experience being 80 years old than you had. And so I'm here to say it actually works out fine. It's not that big a deal. And everything continues, and you can still be very active intellectually and physically, and of course, with your family. So, you have much to look forward to and can speak from that experience. But let me go into now the assigned topic of the research, and so the first thing I care about, perhaps one of the most recent papers was published last year, and I just want to see if I can trying to get my. Okay, usually pretty good at this, about getting my marker to work here. But here we come, and it's published in Management Science for A-level journal, two-echelon system with a whole bunch of retailers making demands on a central warehouse. And the role of the warehouse is to do risk pooling, which we know inventory theory, it's better to, the larger the supply base, the less safety stock you have to hold. So kind of building on those classic ideas. And you said, well, okay, that's nice. It's another kind of mathematical paper, a good extension of the literature. But what does this have to say to anything that really occurs in practice? And so I thought a little bit about this, and I think, what's among the most compelling issues we have these days is the pandemic breakout. And if one looks at this, you realize one of the classic problems that we have here is personal protective equipment. As we all know, especially those of you in New York State, we had a severe shortage of that. And even now, what we found is instead of retailers, we had lots of states that were all competing, in effect, for a relatively scarce supply of inventory of personal protective equipment and production capacity. And so I thought if I took Jack's description and just do some selective word replacement, you realize that here's this two-echelon system. We have this demand for personal protective equipment at the lowest level, not a retailer, but a hospital. And if you have stock at the central warehouse, it's satisfied. Otherwise, there's not only a cost of stock out, actually, healthcare workers become ill and could die and infect their patients. Now, if we had to replay history, imagine if we did have actually a central warehouse for personal protective equipment, as Jack hoped for, where the acquisition and the coordination with production was done under a central authority, of which we have the Defense Production Activity, who works with the external suppliers. And basically, they do the risk sharing, and they can then look at the individual demands from the individual hospitals and use Jack's algorithm to come up with an optimal allocation for personal protective equipment to the various states and hospitals, as the local demands varied over the course of this situation that we're currently in. So I guess this is another one of those lost opportunities. If Jack had been out there in the government and working with a kind of a coherent, aligned central authority, he could have showed them how to solve this problem and get a much better allocation of a scarce resource to where the demands were actually occurring. So, that's kind of interesting of how the intersection between the dynamic optimization and multi-echelon inventory theory could have addressed perhaps one of the most compelling issues we are facing today and in this year. And then I went back a little bit further in time, and so here we have a paper that was published in another A-level journal, Operations Research, in 2007. And this is a slightly different problem about how do we supply service parts to a large, complex machine. And it's a situation, I guess, if any one of the parts is not available, the machine doesn't function. In this case, the machine, motivated by Jack's interest, practical interest, could be a large airplane or a Marine Corps tank, where there's constant wear and tear and need for resupply. And you can see at the bottom the specific issue being addressed, with a central location, where do you stock your spare parts to give a level of service? How do you allocate all the stock through the resupply network? And, how do you just maintain the ongoing productive capacity of these important machines? So that was good, obviously motivated by practice. But again, thinking about what's happening in the world today, this is not a great big machine like an aircraft or an automobile or a tank. It's kind of a little box here. But what is this? This is a testing machine. And these kind of testing machines became available for COVID-19 from Abbott Labs actually in the middle of March. And so, and there's a high supply of these machines. I mean, there's very, very good productive capacity of the machines. And yet we know today we're still not testing in the United States at the levels we need to. I was just looking, actually, we're finally up to 1 million tests a day, but it's been a very slow ramp up. And we're actually only testing people who almost qualify for testing, when we really should be doing much more randomized testing, population-based testing, so we really understood the incidence of this disease in the underlying population, which is a key decision parameter. But because we've had inadequate capacity for testing, we've been unable to do the kind of population randomized testing, that we learned about in our statistics classes in graduate school. So that's the motivation. But again, let me just take Jack's description of his research. So this is the article from McKinsey just in July. Why are we not having adequate testing? Even though we have a large supply of machines to do the testing. And the answer is because we don't have the components for the testing. We're running out of the chemical reagents, we don't have the swabs, we don't have the glass vials. So all of these service parts that Jack talked about in his paper are in scarce supply, and they're not all getting to the right place at the right time. But if we update Jack's 2007 paper here, he solved this problem nearly 15 years ago. Again, just doing a little substitution. How do we produce and store the reagents, the vials, and the swabs so that we can operate testing machines in CVS stores and Walgreens all over the country, very accessible to people. And they have to solve exactly the problem in the bottom set of questions. How do we get the supplies to each location? How do we allocate them across all the stations? And how do we coordinate with the production sites for the reagents, swabs, and vials, so they're doing the right production and getting them to the right distribution. So kudos to Jack for giving us this technology that would have enabled us to address two of the most compelling supply problems that we've experienced over the last 6 months. And maybe if Jack had been, consulted with and worked with the powers that be in Washington, we had a lot of lives saved and less disruption to the economy and our lives through the use of his multi-echelon inventory models that he's been working on so successfully for the last 50 years. So thank you. And with that, I will have concluded my summary of it.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much. It's
It
fantastic.
might be of interest that Peter Jackson and I are currently working on another model for the distribution of vaccines in a timely and effective manner. So we can't quit, Bob.
Yep, so that's great. And as I said earlier, you have many productive years ahead of you.
Hope so.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. So Jack, I'm not going to be able to keep up with all the chats. So I'm just going to try and read a few of the names, and then we'll try and save the chats for you. And I'll read what I can. So Victoria Aberbrook, you know who that is, says, never forget the dinner we had in New York City in 2006. Josh Abbott says, happy birthday. David Briskman, I'm picking up some wine at Zacky's. Zacky's? Do you know what that is, Jack? I guess you do, because you're shaking your head yes. Happy birthday from Henry Green and Josh Abbott, both said happy birthday. Bruce Elwell, and I guess Bobby maybe is a significant other. Triumph TR6s forever. Chris Jones, Alex Weiselberg, Kathy and Bob, looks like McMahon Cronin. Mentioned Xerox and having been on a plane with you or that dropped a few feet. This goes on and on. I can just keep reading, but I think I'll take up all our time, so I won't continue doing that. But
look at all these.
I will definitely have it saved and sent to you so you can see them all. Dan Adams says happy birthday. I mean, like I said, I keep going forever if I do that. Okay, so the next piece that I wanted to get to was I just asked a few people to do 1-minute testimonials. And the funny thing about this is I mentioned I'm not going to go through the accolades of all the people that are speaking. You already saw some of the heavy hitters that you worked with and that know about you from your research. But then I looked at the people that I could ask, and the list of people that know about your work and about your influence, Jack, is just amazing. It spans all walks of life, all parts of the country, or all over the world, and people that are really dedicated to Cornell, which is really amazing. So I'm going to start with, I put them in alphabetical order because it's easiest. So I'll start with Jeffrey Berg.
Thanks, Mark. I'd like to briefly reflect on the various roles that Jack's played in my life since I first met him in 1978, which incredibly is 42 years ago. First, as a professor, Jack taught or assisted in teaching several classes that I took while earning my BS and MEng degrees in ORIE. He taught optimization, inventory theory, and helped teach the OR projects and material handling courses. During these classes, he shared with his students not only the underlying mathematical theories, but most importantly, how to apply OR tools and techniques to real-world problems, whether it be from the US Air Force, from Xerox, General Motors, IBM, SAS Airlines, and others. He made learning interesting, relevant, and practical. He also provided his students with important lifelong skills: critical thinking, data analysis, how to ask questions, how to decompose complex problems, how to work well with one another in teams, and how to communicate solutions both verbally and in writing. The ultimate illustration of this was the second role that he played with me, which was that of advisor. Jack was the advisor on my MEng project with classmates Doug Eman, who I see is on today, and Jordan Lambert. Our client was Xerox Corporation's distribution department in Webster, New York. And the problem we had was to analyze the multi-echelon distribution network for copier spare parts and suggest structural improvements as to where regional and branch parts centers should be located. Of course, we ultimately had a successful project, but this project, which I know Jack personally sourced for our MEng class, provided me with a very unique opportunity. The opportunity to get to know several Xerox executives, two of whom, Bob Camp and Jim McDonald, would later sponsor the first management consulting project I ever sold professionally. And that project became a springboard to accelerate my consulting career. The third role that Jack played in my life was that of colleague. Over the course of at least 10 years, Jack asked me to guest lecture in his supply chain management class, sharing case studies from my management consulting work at Patiglio, Rabin, Todd, and McGrath. This enabled me to share with his students some of the real-world problems that my clients faced, how supply chain management strategies, tools, and systems could be used to improve their operations. At the same time, Jack provided me with informal advice on several occasions on how I could go about thinking and resolving client problems. The last role that Jack played in my life is as a role model for philanthropic support. Jack has not only been generous with his time and skills to teach Cornell students, but as you heard earlier today, he and Linda have been generous with their financial resources to support Cornell University. We both share a passion for Cornell athletics, particularly Big Red hockey. So it comes as no surprise that we were both major donors to the project to renovate Lina Rink a number of years ago. We also share a passion for Cornell ORIE, as many of you who are participating today, I do as well. As a result, we have both given and will continue to give generously to the department so that it can attract and retain the best faculty, have the financial aid resources to attract the best graduate students, and have attractive facilities and tools so that faculty can teach all students who want to learn about ORIE in the most innovative and engaging ways possible. Jack, congratulations on your 80th birthday. We look forward to hearing more in the years to come.
Thank you very much, Jeff. You and your classmates, class of 79, we had a great time, and I thank you all.
And we continue to. Thank you for participating in our seminar series earlier this year to keep us entertained and educated on times during the pandemic.
Yeah, it has been challenging.
Thank you, Jeff. So before I move on to Mark Eisner, who's next, made a stupid mistake, and I did not ask all of the faculty or former faculty members, if you're retired or used to be on our faculty, to, if you can, raise your hand in the Zoom. I just want to recognize all those people who are not your actual hand, Mark, the blue hand, if you can. I want Jack to know how many of his colleagues got up on a Sunday morning or stayed up late on a Sunday night to recognize him. And so I will try and read some of those names after Mark Eisner's testimonial. Mark sent a video testimonial. He's here, but I think I'll play the testimonial, and if he has anything to add after that, then we'll go to that. So Henry, can you please play the testimonial?
Happy birthday, Jack, and greetings from the swamp of Washington, D.C. Welcome to the 9th decade of our lives. We first met when you came to Cornell nearly 50 years ago. I left a year later, but when I returned in 1997, it was as though no time had intervened and we resumed our friendship then. Since that time, I've observed your generosity, the effectiveness of your teaching, the strong relationship you have with students, and I've benefited from the wisdom you've imparted in many discussions we've had together. I particularly remember the dining discussions that we had with students weekly, most recently in Duffield Hall. Here you are holding forth at one of those discussions in your usual fashion. That was one of the ways in which you have influenced many, many students to go on to great things in academia and in industry. Happy birthday, many happy returns of the day.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Mark, if you have a few words to say in addition, that's fine. If not, that's okay. I can move forward. I think you're muted, so let me.
I'm known for always having a few words to add, but I think I'll let you move on to the next folks.
All right, thanks, Mark. It's good to see you. So I just want to read, Jack, very quickly before I move on to the next speaker. Some of the faculty that current and past faculty that have gotten this morning to highlight your birthday. Dave McDavis, Ava Tardos, who's the chair of CS now, David Schmoys, Ron Shellkamp, Peter Frazier, Adrian Lewis, Nagesh, I'm not going to try and say your last name, Gavin, well, I'm not going to try. I also noticed Mike Todd down there. I'm down the list a bit. Dave Goldberg's there. Doug Thomas is my colleague, but he's a professor. Jim Dye's there. Katya Scheinberg is there. They didn't raise their hand like I asked. That's okay. Yeah, so just a whole bunch of the faculty got up this morning to highlight your birthday, Jack, just so you know that was also done. Nathaniel,
I want to say one thing. You mentioned Bruce Elwell's name and Bobby Elwell a little while ago. Now, before I met any of you, Bruce Elwell was one of my victims, early victims, when I taught at the Air Force Institute of Technology. And it's really nice. And when I was in a hospital recovering from my accident, Bruce gave me a call, and it was really very much appreciated.
very cool. Okay, thank you. So Nathaniel Hupert, you're up next. I don't know if I saw his name.
I think we might not have Nathaniel. And Nathaniel is great, but I think that this won't be the first meeting where he got the time a little bit wrong for my days working with him and Professor Mukstad. So.
Okay, that could be my fault. Okay, so I guess you're next, Kathleen King.
All right. Hi, Professor Mukstad. You will always be Professor Mukstad to me, including when I'm 80. So I'm not going to try to change to Jack. But happy birthday. I'm really happy to be here. You were such a huge influence on me, not just because you were my PhD advisor and you had to be, but also, you know, I agree with Catherine's comments earlier that you really taught me about thinking about people first. I really love the fact that you had such great respect for all of your students, the undergraduates, the master's students, the PhD students. You listened to us, you were interested in us. It seemed like you actually liked us. I mean, that's true for all the faculty on this call, of course. That's, you know, but especially for you. And I remember you talking about teaching me and Juan and Colin and others how to think about systems and especially to think about what was motivating the people, what were the incentives that were driving everyone. And I think about that and repeat that all the time. And I attribute it to you, so the opinion has more weight, which is always nice. But I also appreciate all the really kind personal things you did. Like when I was first meeting my now husband's family, and I was very scared of them, and they were really into food and wine, and I was very intimidated. And so you gave me this great bottle of like priceless wine from the early 80s that you'd been saving, so I could give it to my sister-in-law and intimidate her in return, impress her, and she was, and it was great. And it was my small moment of triumph there as I was trying to meet my new in-laws. And I was very appreciative for those kinds of things. So thank you so much for all the teaching and all the other things. And thank you for being interested in the Detroit Tigers, so that when I didn't have anything to show you in terms of results, I could bring up baseball and that could take up our whole meeting time, which was great. So I was appreciative of that too. So thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Fantastic.
Kathleen, Kathy, and others, and I saw Christine's name up here. We were working on trying to understand how the government could, in fact, respond to an anthrax event. So it's I was on the CDC board, science board for a while, and this was and something that everybody was, as you can guess, quite concerned about. So that's what she did her thesis on.
Very nice. Next is Sherry Koenig Stewart.
Jack, first, congratulations on this major milestone. I cannot believe it's been 45 years since we worked together at Cornell. I don't know where the time has gone, and I must have been one of your first graduate students. You know well that I will be forever grateful that you agreed to be my thesis advisor. I was really floundering a bit, and your high energy and creative ideas gave me much needed focus for the thesis. And furthermore, your caring support came at a critical time for me, giving me the confidence that I needed to finish. As I listen to the other people talk here, I think it's clear that those characteristics, high energy, creative ideas, caring support, have been a trademark of your relationship with both students and colleagues. And as I've looked at the body of students that you have guided over the years, I've been struck by how diverse we are, and I think it's a testimony to your ability to look beyond differences and to see ability and potential. And I think you should be justifiably proud of the legion of students that you've guided over the years. So I want to say thank you again and happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sherry. I have to comment about Sherry. She said she was one of my first, and she was. But, you know, I have to thank Sherry as well, because the paper that we worked on together was one of the principal reasons I got tenure. So thank you, Sherry.
Good.
That's fantastic. Sherry, you may not remember this, but we actually met once in the Statler in line for lunch. And afterwards, I didn't know who you were. And you were very kind not to embarrass me and tell me all your accolades. I thought it was very, very, very nice of you not to remind me of who you were. That's great. I didn't feel bad until now, I guess. All right.
Sherry and Jeff, you know, we're both on the trustees at the university, and you know, both played not only major roles in our school, but have had great influence on others. And Sherry had the unfortunate position of reviewing the capital problems with our buildings, and probably wasn't terribly popular with the administration, because she had to, as she was always forthright, had to point out the deficiencies that existed in the processes underway. So everybody should thank you for your candor as well.
Well, it was an honor to serve as a trustee, and just tough timing in 2008.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Redsef Levy. I think I saw his name.
Hi, Jack. Good morning, everybody. So it's a pleasure to have this opportunity. And I don't know if everybody knows, but Jack and I share at least one common trait in our background, that we both arrived to academia after a military service. And I don't know if that was the reason, but in many ways we share the same value system. So I want to, in one word, there is a word in Yiddish that is mensch, and mensch is a good person. I think that I cannot think about anybody that has a better fit to that word than Jack. And I think everybody that spoke so far just illustrated the kind of maybe unfortunately rare leadership style that he had, that was about giving and enabling others. And one thing that was also mentioned here was how conversations with Jack were so much cherished by so many. And I just want to point out that beyond his energy that was mentioned, he's such a broad person. Like, you can talk about family with him, just try to start talking about baseball with him, or sport, wine and food, cars, of course, and of course inventory, and basically anything that you want. You're going to end up with a very lively conversation. But maybe beyond all of that is the optimism that he always projects. And I think that that's an inspiring combination. It definitely inspired me. And if I think about the things that I miss from Cornell and from the years after Cornell, is more opportunities to interact with Jack and have some couple of hours of back and forth. I have to say, some of your slides, I still use them in my teaching. I also stole some of your jokes, and I have to use one of them. When Jack wants to explain people why uncertainty matters, he usually uses the joke that if you're with your face to the fridge and your back to the furnace, you feel on average comfortable. So Jack, just that you would know, this joke is now being used by multiple MIT faculty. So your impact is continuing and broad, and I feel fortunate that I had the opportunity to know you, and I look forward to more years of interacting. So happy birthday.
So Retzef was an interesting student at Cornell, and he took a class that I taught, and before the class started, one of the other students entered my office, and she said, well, who's taking the class? And I went through and I said, Retzef, and she goes, and I said, what's a, she said, you'll find out. So the class starts, and what I found out was that if I planned, and as many of you know, when I planned a 75-minute lecture, I planned pretty much every minute of it. I would get going, and then Retzef would raise his hand. He said, I have just one more question. And those one more questions basically occupied probably 2/3 of each lecture. But it was always fun. There were always good questions, and we had a lot of fun. And I might add that Retzef has had a remarkable career and is certainly one of the people that I professionally respect as much as anybody. Congratulations on your career.
Thanks.
Apparently Susan Hansen and I'm not sure which Kathleen, maybe Kathleen King, used the same joke, Retzef. So it's even more broadly used than at MIT. Next is Bill Maxwell. I don't see Max's name listed, but he may be on. Max, are you there? So I don't think Max is there. I see a 607 number, so I thought maybe it was him, but I think maybe it's not him. So we'll move on. So Elisa Steri, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Okay, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Jack. It's really
Hello.
great to be able to join you to help celebrate your 80th birthday. I'm representing both myself and John today, who sends his best warm wishes and regards as well. We wanted you to know that you've had a meaningful and very positive impact on both of our lives in many ways, academically, professionally, and also personally. John still always reminisces about the work he did with you at SAS Airlines. I think for him, it's one of his favorite life experiences. And I know how much he appreciates that you gave him that opportunity. He still talks about living in Copenhagen, the aquavit and the vending machine, touring around Europe. You know, I don't think I've ever heard him talk about the cargo handling project, but he certainly had a great time. And despite that omission, I'm certain that y'all made a very big impact with SAS Airlines. You know, I'm joking around a little bit, but as I get older, I realize that it is in fact the personal experience that lingers. I wish I could tell you I remembered more of my inventory class, but I do remember you, and I do remember your warm nature and just thoroughly enjoying being one of your students. I want to thank you for the support and friendship that you've given me. I did recall one event that gave me a bit of a chuckle, and I thought maybe Max was going to be on, but I don't know if you recall this, but during a week of MEng, I had a bit of a breakdown, and you and Max agreed to cancel classes for a week so I could get some sleep after that terrible bus simulation problem you gave us. But I wanted to share that. I think the other 80 MEngers will remember it. Because it reflects the person that you are. I always felt that you were in my corner and that you wanted me to succeed. And I think somebody else, I think Sherry might have mentioned that you instill confidence in your students. And that's so important. And as a young female engineer at a time when there weren't many of us, I can't tell you how critically important that was to me and my success, not just academically, but all through my life. And I really appreciate it. The last time we were together in Ithaca, you and I had dinner together at the Statler, and I remember you ordered a nice bottle of Sancerre for us to share. And it was right before I was going to California to study to become a certified som. And for a minute there, I thought you might come with me, just for 1 minute. But I did go, and I did become a certified som. And so in honor of your birthday, I do plan to raise a glass of our favorite beverage later on today. I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something that reminds me of you, something very special, nicely aged, complex, and rare. I hope others will join me in toasting your continued good health as well. And until I can actually share a glass with you, I really want to give you my very best wishes on your 80th birthday and for the years to come.
Yep. And given that we're Cornellians, I'm sure it'll be a red.
It will.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think that Peter Jackson, it's okay for you to have a glass now.
Yes, yeah, I was thinking that.
Okay, next is Sweetheart to Your.
Hi everyone, can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Hi Jack, how are you?
I'm well, good to see you.
I usually don't make PowerPoint slides even in my MBA classes, but I thought in your honor and for my love of movies and to stick to 1 minute or less, I would do that. So from Pittsburgh with thanks, let me see if I can bring this up. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So that was a play on From Russia with Love for old James Bond fans. I know, Peter, you and I have discussed a lot of James Bond lines. Choose your next witticism very carefully, Mr. Bond, for it could be your last, right? So Jack has had a lot of influence. Of course, I took his inventory theory class. The downside was it was 8 in the morning. I am not an early morning person. I'm not a late night person. I actually sleep early and get up late. That's kind of one of my things. So I did pay some attention to class, in class, and I think in one of my blogs recently I wrote one of the things he mentioned that there was $1 trillion of inventory lying around, maybe 2 trillion. And if somebody could somehow, I don't know, even reduce a little bit of it, they could become very wealthy. So that was what I took out of that class and kind of decided that would be a good thing to do. Most importantly for a PhD student, he actually taught me how to write a paper for publication. There's a difference between doing research and then writing for publication. So one of my first papers was published in Management Science. It was single authored because I kind of derived everything. But I think it was either after the first revision or just before I was sending it to the revision, Jack read it and said, okay, this is not going anywhere. You don't even know how to start. You don't have an introduction. You know, as a PhD student, I went straight to theorem 1, actually. But then Jack mentioned that you should kind of explain that there is something called Kanban and JIT, Japanese and all that. So thank you, Jack, for that. Since then, I've had many papers published in management science. We wrote 2 papers together, which was fun. You also offered me a visiting position that people might not know. I was actually a visiting professor, visiting scientist at Cornell for a year. Robin had, I think, taken off to save some souls from Catholicism into Mormonism. I think that was kind of the switch that he was going for. And I was asked to teach the ORIE 410 class. It was an interesting experience. I'm glad I did the experience at Cornell, because when I went to Carnegie Mellon and I taught the undergraduate class in production planning, I won the teaching award pretty much the year later. So thank you for giving me a little bit of a buffer between PhD and academic career. I think what I got a lot from Jack was that while he was teaching, he was also doing a lot of consulting with industry. To me, Jack represented the intersection of academia and industry better than anybody I had seen, and that worked out for me too. Since as I joined Carnegie Mellon, I did a lot of consulting with industry. I also noticed that he spent time in executive education, preparing differently on how to communicate to executives, which is different from how you communicate to undergrads, how you communicate to PhD students. And what is it that senior executives should get out of it. So thank you again, for that. Many years later, I founded a software company that I ran and sold to SAP. Again, many of you might not know this, but Jack was actually one of the angel investors in the company. So Jack and I have had a lot of interaction, and so I want to close with a quote from Whitehead, with Russell and Whitehead, on why universities exist. And I believe Jack represents it as well as anybody else. The justification is that it preserves the connection between knowledge and zest of life. I think we have discussed the zest of life that Jack brings, by uniting the young and old in the imaginative consideration of learning. The task of the university is to weld together imagination and experience and the creation of the future. So thank you, Jack. Happy 80th birthday. And I have been very successful thanks to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next 2 people, actually it turns out, Jack, that several people emailed me saying that they wanted to say something. So I'm going to give a couple of those people an opportunity to do so. And then anybody that has anything else to say can jump in after that. So first is Robert Blinken. See, he's here. And I think he's trying to unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
There you
go. So happy birthday, Professor Muckstadt. I was just a lowly undergraduate OR major. Everyone's got PhDs and MSs and done all sorts of crazy things, but I wanted to indicate just how influential you were and pragmatic. So if you can give me a full screen, Professor Lewis, I have a few things to share in a high-tech fashion with everyone.
Henry, can you allow Robert to share his screen?
You can just share.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I don't. Oh, maybe I don't see it. Am I full screen on everyone's?
We're seeing you. You have to share your screen. The little green.
Oh, okay.
On the bottom.
Oh, I didn't mean screen. I meant the image. My image, not my screen. Just my image.
Yeah.
Am I a small box or big box? There we go. That's what I meant. Okay. So Professor Muckstadt, when I was an undergrad at Cornell, your course Inventory Theory OR 562, graduate level course, was viewed as the penultimate ORIE course taught by the penultimate inventory theory authority in the world. So of course, any undergraduate in their right mind would not be taking this course. And here's the reason why. This is the original notebook. So let's see if we can see here. Yeah. Okay, well, what it says is Tuesday, Thursday, 1:30 in the afternoon to 3:30 in the afternoon. So that's 2 hours twice a week. And then your TA was Tuesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. What undergraduate, especially a senior, in their right mind would take a course like that? And everyone talked about lecture notes. Well, you know, this is them. This is, it's not really showing up, but this is a semester of what I call 4 blackboard worth of notes. I still have every single one. However, your influence, the big picture was very interesting to me in my career. Because what happened was at the end of this of a semester of 4 blackboard lectures, you had a pragmatic question, which is, okay, how much does all of this ORIE save you versus just using your common sense? So of course there was a huge 1 or 2 lecture theoretical derivation of this, and the answer was really very simple, about 5%. So I took that conclusion, and that had a profound effect on my career decision, because I had been invited to consider the MS program, and I thought to myself, all right, all this saves 5%, and this was in the days before desktop computers, before Excel, before PowerPoint. And I said, well, the only people that have problems big enough where saving that 5% was worth the effort to come up with the solution were the largest corporations and government institutions. So based on that, I decided to enter the working world because I figured, you know, most of the companies can't afford to actually do these solutions. I had a very brief stint at General Electric, which involved me, my first assignment, I was literally a file clerk. I was the assistant to the office secretary in a 5-person sales office in California. Not exactly a use of my ORI background. Next, I was the assistant to production planner, whatever, but you know, there was no Excel, so I basically just made bar graphs for 6 months for someone, another high use. So I left GE, and I joined Kearney Management Consultants in their distribution and logistics practice. And lo and behold, one of my first assignment was to assess 2 competing proposals for a state-of-the-art mixed integer routing linear program. So this was like the first application of all this stuff in the world. And one was UCLA and the other one was University of Pennsylvania. And my conclusion really was the following. One model had lots of shadow costs and was very elegant, but I realized in practice, no one could decide what the appropriate level for the shadow costs were. As a result, I thought no one could use it. Well, where did that come from? Well, that came from one of the lectures. The end of one of the lectures. Okay, at the very top here. Here's what it says. It says must trade computability and ease of use for accuracy. In other words, just because something is really accurate doesn't mean it's usable. And interesting, all the other routing, warehouse location, and local distributions studies I did for Kearney were all based on common sense, roll up the sleeves number crunching. I had not a single probability, not a single integral or summation sign in any of the work that I've did professionally since then. but still my ORIE and particularly the rigorous computation we did with derivation and computations with Professor Muckstadt was really a priceless framework for all the business decisions I've engaged in. So thank you, Professor Muckstadt. You will never be forgotten and always be influential.
Well, I must say, I don't think too many people have their class notes from that era, but that's very, that's impressive.
And all the homeworks, tests, and quizzes. Here's one exam, my first one. I got a 12 out of it. I got a 12 out of, here's the book. I got a 12 out of 20. That was a good score because the average was 10 out of 20 on that exam. October 18th, 1977.
Kathleen King is showing that she also has the notes. So apparently these are hot items. I want to say to Robert that there are no lowly undergrads, except maybe outside of Ori. We'll move on. Next is Lefteris Lakovu.
Yakovu, Mark. Thank you. Thanks for giving the floor. I've been gracious about this. Chief, happy birthday. The privilege and the blessing of my life, being mentored by you, spending time with you. I love you. I want you to know that. And in my definition, success is has to do with the ability to impact the difference of people's lives. I cannot think of more successful man than you. And I thank you, and by saying thank you, I know I echo a lot of my classmates, 92 PhD. I wrote something while I heard people talking. I think greatness is your passion, but vision is your obsession. Right? Jack had that uncanny ability, and after I spent time working with industry regulators, both in Europe and the US, I gotta tell you, I realized what a rarity Jack is. Jack has the ability to synthesize the people's contribution into a big picture and make the entity that he serves be the focal point in an adaptive world and position it properly. And he does that with care, compassion, what I call empathetic joy, bringing the best out of people. Jack, I think you're a master of doing the best with what you have. And lessons that I learned from you, I use them throughout my career on both sides of the Atlantic. That 8 o'clock class that you tortured me with, that Sridhar mentioned about, now I get up at 5:30, and many times I'm thinking about what I missed out of that. So, being sleepy or with coffee, and you always made fun of me. I want to thank you for allowing me to sit in meetings that you had as a director of the school, where I was, I felt uncomfortable. I want to get out, and you said, no, you got to sit down and listen to how I deal with that. And I want you to know that that was incredible as a department head for me, or when I run companies. You're changing my thesis of the topic of my thesis every week. I don't know if you recall when you're coming back from all these trips that you're making, and at one point Andy Lertz tells me, Professor Mukstad is like that. He will be changing every week. Make sure you freeze the thesis, the topic of the thesis, and go to his office and say, this is what it's going to be. One thing that some people know, maybe some people don't know, what I value, that I've seen again and again, when Jack spends time with you, he's there for the long haul for you. So anytime you need him, he's there for you. And Chief, I know you know what I'm talking about, and I cannot say enough thank you about that. I learned about you the incredible impact of the word interesting. So during your executive education, when you had me present, and a lot of the executive folks were asked questions that others wouldn't find smart, but you were bouncing back with interesting. And the word interesting has been a tool in my vocabulary in my arsenal for a long time. I want to thank you. I think to be, you had the ability to be kind, optimistic, passionate. And in today's world, more than ever, these are traits that are needed, and these are traits for a truly brave Renaissance man. And you will always be that for me. I'm thrilled you're doing well after that crazy January. We had spoken just 1 week before the accident. And I look forward to many more birthdays and have the ability to spend time with you. Mark, thank you for making time for me. I appreciate you.
Well, Lefty, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. So now it's time for anyone else that would like to just jump in. Please try and.
I would like to jump in if you don't mind.
Ah, Guillermo, good to see your, or I guess I can't see you, but I can hear your voice. Sure, go ahead.
Let me see if I can start the video. It doesn't seem to allow the video. I'm in Hong Kong. I don't know if that is a problem, but at least I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. So Jack, happy birthday. It's really great to be here with you. I didn't learn about this event until today, earlier today, from Sridhar Tayur, and he sent me the link. So I just joined a few minutes ago, and I've been listening to all the people, you know, going over memories of their time at Cornell. I have very sweet memories of my time at Cornell. I was not fortunate to take your course, mostly because I'm too lazy. Waking up at 8 a.m. in the morning, you know, it's way too early for me. But when I joined Columbia University, I had to teach a course, a graduate course in inventory. So I spent a lot of time reading, you know, all the notes by, you know, Pete Venett and Sangwell, and the books by Arrow and Kiefer and Wolfowitz and Scarf. But I ended up, you know, spending a significant amount of time teaching out of some notes that someone gave me from your course, Jack. And the students loved it. So happy birthday. And I hope you stay healthy and live many more years and continue guiding students at Cornell. You're an inspiration for most of us. You combined intelligence and, you know, the ability to model important industrial problems in an elegant way, and that has always been an inspiration for many of us. Congratulations, Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks, Guillermo.
I would like to say something.
Bob Blau, I see his hand is raised. I'd like to move onto him, and then I don't know who the next person was that who said that, but if not, then you'll go next. Bob?
No, it's
Jack. Go ahead.
Say something.
Jack, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Our time in Ithaca never overlapped, but every time I visited Cornell, you always had plenty of time to talk with me. And I want to talk about some insight that you gave me in the early 80s. It was so interesting. As the microcomputers, the PC started to come about, you told me the biggest impact this was going to be was the reduction of levels of middle management. And it illustrates the kinds of insights you've always had. And your warmth over many years has really been special. And I just want to remind you that you owe me a bottle of wine from the 2012 election. So happy birthday, and I intend to collect that bottle at some point.
Well, I'd be happy to share with you. I have way too much wine given the number of years I have left. You know, that's a real serious inventory problem, Bob.
I don't think you're going to have a problem finding people that want to have that glass of wine with you. Shane Henderson is up next, and then I see Peter Crampton after that.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Jack, happy birthday. I want to pass along one thing that I learned from you, but I actually learned many things like everybody else. We can be facing pretty high stakes decisions, but you can face those high stakes decisions with a good sense of humor and have a bit of fun through the whole thing. And the occasion where I've most recently experienced or used this is in the modeling group with Peter Frazier and his team battling COVID here, or planning for COVID here at Cornell, where I think we've had a lot of impact. So we had a good time doing that as well. We're continuing to have a good time with that. But the thing that really brought that home for me was back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, somewhere around about there. I was this incredibly green new director for 1 year. And you, Adrian, and I popped down to a wonderful advisory council down in New York. We were talking with these folks. And then afterwards, which we got into a rental car, I think at about 11 o'clock or something that night. And then we headed back, and you sat in the general seat in the back, and Adrian and I were in the front. And I remember it was 4 hours of just laughs from one end to the other, talking about all kinds of stuff. It was a brilliant trip. I really enjoyed it. And that was probably where I particularly picked up this lesson. Thanks a lot.
Well, this thing that you just mentioned about the work of you and Peter Fraser and others, I'm not sure everybody recognizes the importance of that to the Cornell community. They have, the plan that Cornell has put into place is, well, it was recognized in ABC Morning the other day, and Peter Fraser got his 15 seconds of fame in that. I think something of that order. But I think it shows the leadership that our school has on the Cornell life of students and the importance that the administration places on the type of work that our faculty and students do. So, you all should be, everybody should be happy about it, but in particular, the group of you who did this work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I agree. I also want to, what others may not know is Peter Fraser, Shane Henderson, David Schmoys, Oktay Gunluk, and a long, I think Franz Shellkamp was involved, long list of faculty and students were involved in the reopening of Cornell and in the planning of our classes for the semester. So, and then locally, of course, we had Jim Renegar, who's our director of undergraduate studies, working to help us in Ori open up. So let me go to Peter Crampton, and then I don't know Alex's last name, but he's texted me on or chatted with me privately. So Peter Crampton, and then Alex, and then we'll go down to Jim Dye.
Jack, happy birthday. I'm one of several from the undergraduate class of 1980 on this call. Chris Jones, Nyla Risk, and others are on as well. And very much wanted to wish you a very happy birthday. One of the themes of the call is what a phenomenal teacher you were, and I would certainly concur. I learned linear programming from you in the 70s, the period in which you had extremely organized and detailed notebooks that you would convey largely through putting them on the blackboard, but it was actually a very powerful method of instruction, and I found it extremely effective. Following Cornell, I went to Stanford, and one of the first courses I took there was a PhD class from George Danzig on linear programming. And that was an excellent class, but I have to say, you're the better teacher. So, and it's, it's interesting that these linear programming is something that I really use every day, and it's just, phenomenal. And I always think of you when I am using that very powerful tool. So thank you.
Well, Peter, those are kind words. And of course, you've had a very distinguished career yourself. And it's one of the great joys of having had the opportunity to interact with people like yourself who have made such an impact on the world. And so Peter, congratulations on your work that you've done. And I know that most people probably are familiar with it, so I won't take time to describe it in great detail, but you've had a great impact on our society, and as a human being, you're a first-rate person.
Thank you. You're a good mentor and role model.
Yeah, well, I tried.
Alex Joseph.
Yeah, hi, this is Alex Joseph. Hi, Jack, happy birthday. And hey, I think we have some of my colleagues who are on the call, and I have the distinction of having been Jack's first students at Cornell in 1974, the co-op student class in summer of '74. And I can't tell you how fortunate I have been. Jack has a profound impact on me, not only in terms of what he taught me, but he actually invited me to give a lecture to the MEng class after I graduated. And I came in and he said, you know, Alex, I'm doing some consulting work for a company. I'd like you to join them. They would benefit from me. I said, no, Jack, I'm happy. But as you know, Jack insisted. 34 years later, I graduated from that company as a group executive. So he's had a significant impact on me. Jack, may God bless you, and Linda, and thank you very much for everything you've done for us. Thank you.
Yeah, so you were one, Alex, one of the people I got into Chicago, the old Chicago Pneumatic Tool Company, and I think on this call is Sam Millett and Eric Gensch, and they've followed you as employees of Chicago Pneumatic. And for your interest, I talked with Tom Latimer, the old CEO of the company, who's in his mid-90s now, just the other day, and he's doing well. And it's all these relationships. It's what makes life an interesting travel. That all the wonderful people you interact with, and we've had and I'll never forget the time when I convinced you to go from Supermarkets General to work for Chicago Pneumatic, and we sat in Waldorf Astoria having a drink right after you had accepted the job.
Yeah, I remember it well. Thank you very much, Jack. Happy birthday. May God bless you.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time.
Jim Dye, you're up next.
Yes, this is Jim Dye. I hope everyone can hear me. Let me be brief. I joined ORI faculty in 2012. As a new faculty member there, I found out that Jack actually stopped by quite often, frequently. We chat. So I really appreciate that the kindness that he came by to essentially get me oriented in the department. And one thing that we talked a lot is about healthcare applications. So I just started writing some papers in healthcare operations, and he learned about one paper, and he immediately downloaded that paper. A few days later, he has all these comments there, and really helped shape our final version of the paper. Jack, thank you, and a particular thank you for your kindness. And I find that one interaction with Jack is that he's really focused on the have real impact to operations, whether it's hospital or other settings. Now, of course, our interaction mostly related to hospitals. So later on, we actually supervised one emerging project together, and I can see through that setting that he is also every meeting. Every lengthy discussion is really focusing, hitting home that message. Through that process, I also learned to be patient, to listen to basically like a student, right, sitting in the setting. So, Jack, thank you for everything, and a happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So Peter Fraser has to go, so I want to have him sneak in real quick. So Peter, if you have something you wanted to say quickly, then we'll move on to David Schmoyer.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. You were talking about the COVID work, and I just wanted to say that, we've really been inspired. I personally have been really inspired by the work that Jack has done, and his skill and the depth of his experience in terms of using operations research and industrial engineering to do practical things to help real people. And it's just really wonderful, Jack, the scope of everything that you've been able to do over the course of your career. So just wanted to wish you a happy birthday and say thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, the work that you did is for the university and the country as a whole is extremely appreciated and appropriate, and I thank you for that.
It's great to be able to, be a part of a tradition
One
doing
of the
good things with math.
One of the important things that you'll learn in life, Peter and everybody, is opportunities come along. They don't come along all that frequently, but when they do come along, it's an imperative that you take advantage of those opportunities. And this was one where there was clearly a significant need. And the group of you did it. And that in itself is commendable.
We're glad to be able to contribute.
Yeah, well, good for you.
David Schmoys, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. Jack, I wanted to start by saying thanks. I mean, you know, the list of things that you contributed to my life is just, you know, too long to list. Of course, you hired me, which of course, you know, is
it might have been important.
Yeah. But more to the point, and maybe speaking for many of the faculty on the Zoom call, I mean, one of the things that's special about OR at Cornell is the community of faculty and this sense of all being together as a community. And this is a tone that's often, not always, but often set from the top. And it definitely was the spirit in the department that I came into, and has really continued on as a tradition, that it is not a competitive, it is a cooperative. It is groups of people figuring out how to work together and be more than the sum of our parts. And this is a real important tone that really permeated my initial years, and I think has continued on as part of the tradition. It led to things like the group that Peter was able to lead to help with the reopening. And it's this sense of giving back that is being such an important element to what comes out of this community atmosphere. And really, I can't state strongly enough the impact that you had in creating this sense of we have tools. And also I can say that when it was my turn to step in to lead the department, you had this very important thing of saying you should know what you want to accomplish and you should figure out how to get there. And this sense of sort of thinking about a broader purpose is something I definitely learned from you and benefit from your guidance along the way as I was doing it. So many, many thanks. And I look forward to leaning on your good advice for years to come.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, your leadership in the school, along with Shane's and others and Mark's, you know, you've made this a much better place than it was when I left as director. You all did a great job.
Yeah, we'll just say
are doing a great job. And I think that once we have the ability to have people, alumni return to campus, they will get a better appreciation for the changes that have occurred since the early days, and the leadership that the program presently has in the whole field. Now you have to go back a long time. You know, Dick Conway and Bill Maxwell, they really pioneered simulation, and there were a lot of things that were first done at Cornell. And again, what you're doing, all of you, the younger faculty included, is leading the nation's view of what operations research is, the opportunities to use the ideas to better mankind, and obviously also to instill in our students the spirit of learning and what they can do with their lives. So, all of you have followed on, and I'm really appreciative of that.
Thanks, Jack. I will say when I took the job, I was a little concerned about whether I was getting it over my head, and David and Shane and Sid Resnick and yourself and Mike Todd and others really have allowed me to keep my head above water and have helped me in your mentorship. So it's really a wonderful thing. Howard Morgan, you're up.
Let me unmute here. So, Jack, you joined Cornell about a year after I left the faculty there, where I had gotten my degree with Dick Conway and Bill Maxwell as my advisor, who I thought was on the call maybe a little earlier. But and I want to say that your reputation continued to grow over the years as I continued to engage with Cornell and Cornell OR, both as a faculty member at Penn and Caltech, and then later on as a venture capitalist and coming back to give lectures. And I did spend some time with you when I would do that on occasion, and was always pleased to hear how strongly you were upholding all of the traditions that have just been so eloquently talked about for the department. And now as a trustee at the university, I know even more how important things are, like the work that was discussed in terms of the testing methodology for Cornell. I do look at the dashboard every day to see how we're doing, and it's because of that testing, I think, that we're doing so well. And I think the department is so much stronger for you having been a key part of it for so many years. And you know, I can hear that as I hear other people talking, that I'm very proud to have known you, unfortunately not have worked with you, but to have known you for so long, and really feel that you're doing great, and a great role model at 80, which I've got not that many more years to go for. Thank you, and happy birthday.
Thank you. And Howard, you've made significant contributions to the university and our school, and we appreciate that.
So I'm going to go to Chris Jones, and then I see Charlie Tall has messaged me he would like to speak next. So Chris Jones first, and then Charlie Tall.
Happy birthday, Jack. It was great to chat with you about a week ago. It's been really just an amazing privilege to maintain our relationship over many years across many jobs that I have had. Sometimes listening to your advice, and sometimes not. But one story I wanted to share about Jack, because it revealed a skill that I didn't know about that Jack had, though I shouldn't have been surprised, is when I was at Amazon working in supply chain. Amazon still had a single echelon inventory system. And Jack began working with the head of OR at Amazon and did all sorts of analysis to show the benefits of moving to a multi-echelon inventory system. But there was one big hurdle to overcome, which was the senior vice president in charge of supply chain, who's now the head of Amazon retail. His name is Jeff Wilkie, who's very brilliant, driven, but very much a fire-breathing dragon who has a daily diet of Amazon managers for breakfast. And so the hurdle was to convince Jeff Wilkie that this was a good idea. And what happened was Jack made his presentation, and for about, I don't know, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, Jeff Wilkie was silent, which is basically never heard of. And then he pounded the table and said, "I wish I had thought of it." And so the whole company pivoted to move to a multi-echelon inventory system. And I don't know if folks realize that Jack, among his many influences, changed the course of what Amazon did. So thank you, Jack. I hope you have a wonderful birthday.
And I've got the paper typed up. Peter typed it, so it'll be on our way to you. So you'll have a chance to see it.
I can't wait.
All right, thank you. So Charlie Tall, and then Jamal Pender.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are unmuted. There you are.
Am I coming through? Okay. Well, this is an incredible group of people, and what Chris said is part of what I've come to know as Jack's legend across the field of OR. Now I'm looking across here, and I see 100+ people, and I see probably 350 degrees. Such an incredible horsepower of really inspirational people. And I grew up a military brat. When I first got to Cornell, Jack was there for his first year, and I ended up being in his first group of advisees. And I was intimidated, as a lot of students were in the 70s. And Jack, I want to thank you for your service. I know what that meant in the military, having been raised in that environment. And then later on, as you tried to convince me to stay on for my master's, I couldn't afford the debt. So I went out and didn't really reach out to you until like almost 30 years later. And but your legend had been out there, and I wanted to say you've been influential and been able to build friendships and bonding. And I just want to thank you very much for your service on the Cornell front and seen what's happened to OR, and it's amazing, this network. I mean, I don't know if Bobby Blau remembers me, but we spent a couple of years on the Amex together, and there were very few mathematically driven people in the industry back in the 70s, and I know Bobby was one of them. I remember him very clearly. He might remember me as nicknamed Turtle. And it wouldn't have happened for me or maybe Bobby if we hadn't gotten OR through someone like you. And I just really appreciate knowing you and having been mentored by you in many ways, and the help you've given me and my firm at times when I was really looking for people. Thank you.
So let me just comment about Charlie for a second. As he mentioned, he was in the group of my first victims. He was, there were about 20 or so students who were, I was a freshman advisor, and he was one of the people in that group. But as time went on, I got to know Charlie better and better as time went on. And one of the things that Charlie did, which was very important, is he provided me some funds in the summer to hire students that would work on research projects. And one of those students was Christine Barnett, who was on this earlier. And there were other ones too. But that kind of help transforms the lives of students. So in Christine's case, you know, she ultimately decided to go get a PhD and work in healthcare systems because of the experiences that she had. So this is, you know, Cornellians help Cornellians in many ways. You know, financial things is one thing, but they create opportunities for other people. And that's one of the wonderful things that I've observed over time, how we've been able to work to enhance the lives of the student body, and then watch as they succeed in life. And I think one of the things that made me realize I was getting old was when Sherry announced her retirement. I couldn't quite fathom that Sherry was already going to retire. It was, I did feel old at that point.
So Jamal, you're up next, and then Hussein Tapaloglu.
Sure. Happy birthday, Jack. Just wanted to say hello. I have this little guy. He also wants to say happy birthday, although he can't speak yet. But I just wanted to give a little story about you and I. And when I first came to Cornell, I think I was the only junior faculty person paired with another person for my MN's project. And it turns out that pairing was with you. And I remember our first meeting, walk into your office, we're meeting with the students, and you're like, well, where's your piece of paper? Where's your pencil? You know, I've always taken that to heart on terms of being prepared for the meeting. And for that particular year, I definitely felt like an MN student myself. All the lessons you've taught me, and it's just been a great experience sort of working with you throughout the years. And one thing I do miss due to COVID is every once in a while, you just walk down the hall and just stop in my office and ask how I was doing, how's my family doing. And, you know, I appreciate that, and all the conversations we've had, and even the ones I've had at your house. I really enjoyed them. You've always given me a lot of insight in how to be a better academic. And so I really appreciate those lessons that you've taught me about family as well. And you know, how to be like you effectively. So I really appreciate that, and happy birthday once again.
Well, thank you. And yeah, Jamal and I have had a lot of fun. That's good. He's done a great job. And if any of you had the opportunity to watch the interactions that he's had with students, it's just really, really wonderful. And congratulations on that. And of course, congratulations on the newborn and your other child as well.
Thanks. So Hussein Tapaloglu, and then I got in a chat from Matthew English. Hussein, are you still there?
Jack.
There he is.
I came to Cornell in 2002, and you were the mentor to me, along with Peter Jackson and Robin Roundy. You taught me how to do research. You taught me how to teach. You taught me how to interact with students. You taught me how to interact with people in general. And you always put the institution above yourself. And with your stature and accomplishments, it could have been very easy to see yourself as larger than everything. But you were always a team player. You always said ORIE and Cornell in general is above and beyond us, and let's push for this institution. And that's something that I hadn't seen before, and that turned out to be the whole culture that you passed on to very many of us later down the road. I really appreciate everything that I learned from you, again, in every dimension of academic and personal life. Needless to say, when I needed help with academics, I went to your office and got help many, many times. But also, I don't know if you remember, I'm not going to go into details, but when I had difficulties with my personal life as well, I came to you a number of times, and I really appreciate me during those difficult times. So thanks a lot, and you made a lot of difference for us. Thank you.
Hussein, I appreciate your comments. It was always, you know, given that you went to New York not so long ago, we haven't interacted nearly as much, but when you were on the campus there, it was always a great joy working with you. You're a smart guy, and I appreciate what you've done for our school.
Thanks, Jack.
Matthew English, and then Doug Thomas.
I'll keep it brief. Jack, again, happy birthday. Sorry I'm a little late, but being on the West Coast, this started slightly early in the morning for us out here. You know, Jack and I were going to get together this past January when, suffice to say, Jack, you had your little detour, shall we say, but just wonderful to see you feeling well and just thrilled to be here on your birthday. My really quick story, I just remember struggling a little bit my sophomore year in Cornell. I was in one of those other engineering programs, and folks like Jack and Max just pulled me and said, hey, you know, this is the place for you to be, giving me this lifelong love of learning and data and seeing the story, frankly, behind the numbers. I'm now a proud father of 2 freshman sons at Cornell. Both are at least angling towards OR. We'll see. I've no pressure from me, but again, such wonderful mentors, so many wonderful faces here. I mean, so many of you on this call, I can't call you all out, have had such an influence on my career and myself as a person. But for today, it's Jack. Thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Matthew, if you want to send them our way, we'll put all the pressure you need. Let's see. So Doug Thomas and then Mike Todd.
Can everybody hear me okay? Happy birthday, Jack. It's great to see here, to see you. I'm one of many on the call that have been influenced positively as a Cornell student. I'm probably one of few that has never known a world without Muckstats. I actually grew up next door to Jack and Linda, and I'm sure there are I see other Muckstats, so hi to all of you. So I had the privilege of knowing that Jack was a great person before having any idea that he was a great scholar. I won't continue to beat the drum of all of the wonderful things. I just call out that things that have positively influenced me in my academic career as a professor now at UVA have been just this is how you do it. You watch some people, and without them explicitly saying you should do this, you should do that, they just do what they do, and you say, yeah, that's what I want to try to do. Sridhar mentioned intersection of research and practice, which I think is important, and David and Shmoyes and Shane Henderson talked about the influence on the institution, and I just know very few people that are able to have the incredible impact on the research community, disseminate it to practice through exec ed and consulting, and still contribute the way that you have, Jack, to the institution, which I love, and I have a daughter there now. So, and then the last thing I'll say is I'm appreciative on a personal note for you getting to share the COVID bubble, the COVID wine drinking bubble with my parents and getting through this tough time. So happy birthday to you, and hi to all the Muckstadts.
No, thank you, Doug. And for those who may know that Doug's father, of course, was a longtime professor in the business school, but he retired as the dean of the new College of Business. So Doug's got a lot of experience of learning about how to deal in the academic world. Well, thanks, Doug. And he and his father and I were his basketball coach too, which was a lot of fun.
All right, and Mike Todd, if you're still there, I don't see you here, but let's see if I can find you. Oh, there he is. Wonderful. Go ahead, Mike.
So greetings from Vermont. I overlapped with Jack as a faculty member probably longer than anyone. I joined Cornell a year before Jack did and stayed till a few years before he slowly faded out of SORE's life. And I have to say, academia is you all know this joke that the fights are so vicious because the stakes are so small. And over the years, ORIE is a broad tent. It's got a lot of people working on different things. And we disagreed at times, but I always enjoyed all the collegiality and the great respect that Jack had for people over the whole spectrum of getting the best people. Some of them are on this call right now, hiring over a number of years, making ORE a terrific place. So from that point of view, congratulations, Jack, that was terrific. But I think more that just looking across the names here, and there's some students I recognize and so on, but the impact you had on them was just so huge. And I would go back to alumni meetings and say, oh yeah, I sort of remember you, yeah, and chat a little bit. And Jack knew everybody and kept in touch with everybody. And that's just fantastic. So great job, Jack, and good to see you. Glad you've recovered, and enjoy your Big Red tonight.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all you did for our school too, Mike. You were an intellectual powerhouse that really put us on the map. So you had a great run.
One last testimonial. We're coming up to the 11 o'clock hour, and it's supposed to be time for Jack to say a few words. So Christine Barnett, and then Jack to respond.
Hi, I just wanted to say happy birthday, Professor Mukstad. As mentioned, I did some work as an undergraduate and master's with your CDC projects, and those were so influential on my life and career, and it's just been so amazing to know you, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, it's so nice to see both you and John and the young one. It's great.
So Jack, there's supposed to be time for you to respond. We've sort of run up to the 11 o'clock hour. If you have some things you'd like to say, that's great. If not, that's okay too. And then we will leave the Zoom open for a discussion if there's further discussion, but we will be signing off around 11-ish. So Jack, anything you want to say? Or your family even?
Well, again, I just thank everyone for taking the time on this Sunday to spend time with us and share their ideas and thoughts about the past. And there are two people on here today that had the longest set of experiences as students at Cornell: Ed Chan and Chris Jones. They started out as undergraduates. Chris actually had 2 MEng projects he worked on, got that degree, and then ultimately got his PhD. And Ed did the same thing, undergraduate, MEng, PhD. So they were around for 9 years as students, which is somewhat of a record.
Sorry, I did get you didn't hear me. I did get an email back from Dennis. I don't know if he made it on or not. I do want to give him an opportunity to say hi, please.
Honestly, I don't, he didn't mention to, I thought maybe, I talk to him all the time. So I thought he was just being coy with you by not mentioning this today, but I think he just didn't quite get the message.
He emailed me at 10:53, so that would be 6 minutes ago. So he may be up in about. If not, then I'm sure he sends his well wishes.
Yeah.
And I think now anything anyone else wants to say, or we'll just leave the Zoom open for any other conversation. I know there are people here you haven't seen in a while, and so that may be worthwhile just to leave it open. I'll be around for another 15 or so minutes, but I understand other people have things to do and may just drop off. So thank you all for the time. We really appreciate it, and please take care.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. How are you, Howie?
Happy birthday, Chief.
Happy birthday, Professor.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Oh,
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday from the swamp.
Happy birthday, Professor Mukstad.
Dave.
Birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday, Dad.
Hi.
Are you back in Ithaca, Jack?
No, I'm in Ann Arbor.
Still in Ann Arbor. Okay.
Jack.
Happy birthday, Jack. This is Lee.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah.
And tell him to stop using your jokes. They're not that good.
Look at where's Stephen? Did you see it?
Jack, I will say this before I told you this already, but it is amazing how many people have been influenced by you. And I also want to say something that's interesting to me is that even if you weren't influencing a person directly, there was significant influence maybe one generation removed. And so, for example, Guillermo Gallego was one of my mentors when I first started on faculty at Michigan. I would see him at influence meetings. He was as generous with his time as you are with yours. And it just didn't dawn on me that maybe the way he carries himself was influenced by the way you carry yourself. So just the kind of thing that kind of influence it's like a tree, it just expands, and it's amazing to me. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah, well, again, I can't say words don't really work here. How much I appreciate everybody taking the time today. And Peter, that was really nice about the. Peter's having his glass of wine. That's good. And fortunately, it's 12 hours difference, so he's entitled.
I'm allowed. Great to see everybody else on the call too. This is really neat. Hi, Kathy.
It was, and so many of the people that we've known for a long time.
Yeah, this is really great. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Happy birthday, Jack.
Again, take care. Take care. Yeah.
And I want to tell you, just by seeing the charts that you had, I experienced all the things on the left side of that chart, which now made me really feel quite old.
Well, you know, my son who just was on there, he had the most important experience. He got his ME degree, but he had the most important part of his experience at Cornell as he met Michelle and his wife. So who was also one of our students and Ed Chan's classmate too, as I recall.
Yes. Happy birthday, Jack. I'll see you later, but I did want to say hi to Ed. Shout out to Ed.
Hey, Michelle. Happy birthday, Jack.
All right, take care. Oh, Ed, it's so good to see you. Your hair
Good to be here.
Your hair is a little grayer than the last time I saw you.
Oh, that's a longer story.
But I have no hair, so you know what can I say?
Oh, I'm losing that too. That's a far longer story, but I do remember you always saying that you had more hair before I was your student than you did after I was your student.
Well, Ed, yeah, of course, it was 9 years, so that was, you know, what can I say?
Yeah, I think you may have taught me correlation is not causation, but I'm sure I believe it.
I should also mention to you, Jack, that Robin Roundy did send a video. I was unable to download it in time for the meeting, so I will have it downloaded and sent to you. But he did send the video.
All right. Well, great. Again, thank you all. And it's after 11, so I think it's time for everybody to go on with the rest of their day. But again, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jack.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, bye-bye now.
Happy birthday.
Jack, the fact
Veronica,
that
how are you, Veronica?
this fact that
Good,
some,
I'm very good. Thank you. Very good. It's so good to see you, and thanks for everything. Thanks, Mark.
the fact that so many people are here is a real tribute to the impact that you had, and how special it is to be part of the ORI group. So
Yeah.
happy birthday.
Well, Bob, good to see you. Oh, as always.
Bye.
Right. Happy birthday.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Good show, Jack. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Oh, and Susan, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you.
So Henry, you are going to be able to save. Oh yes. So Henry's going to.
I answered that. Yeah.
We'll send those to you. There's a lot of people saying happy birthday, but I couldn't find the time to read them all.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Was this whole thing recorded?
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So much going on. Right. So we're gonna Henry's recording it, and he's going to put it on a YouTube channel for other people to view if they want to.
Great.
Happy birthday, Jack. This is Nagesh.
Nagesh.
Good to see you. It was so much fun to hear about all the
Yes.
exciting contributions you made. And of course, you had a big impact on me as well. Thank you.
Yeah, indirectly. I'm your grandfather.
Yes, academic grandfather.
Yeah.
Well, thank you and have a good day.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Jack. Just wanted to say
Oh,
hi.
Jimmy.
What a wonderful session. I'd love to hear all the stories.
Yeah, well, we have many, don't we, Jimmy?
A few that I can remember.
Mostly around wine, though, Jimmy.
Too much wine.
You haven't heard all the stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll see you, Jack.
Okay, it's good to see you, Lee. My goodness.
Thanks. Thanks very much for everything you've done for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, we had a lot of fun in the old days. Well,
Oh,
Jim-
by the way, it was my fault.
Okay.
Bye.
So, Jimmy, how's life down in Florida?
It's good.
Good.
It's good. No hurricanes, and just dealing with data this lovely Sunday morning as usual.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and the kids are okay?
Kids are okay. Yeah.
So how,
Very well.
what grade is Tony in now?
He's a senior. He's writing his college applications as we speak.
Oh boy.
And no matter how much I say, just Cornell is his first choice. I mean, I keep telling him, be careful. There are guys like Mukstad out there.
Yeah, you never can tell. That's right. Well, if he comes this way, I will certainly be delighted to chat with him. He's a wonderful, both your
You're going to have another one of us.
spectacular.
Be careful what you wish for. It could happen.
What's Jackie doing?
Oh, I think she's going to be the OR person. She is so systematic. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Jimmy, I'd like to understand this thing that's up behind you with the drill and it says Papa on it.
Oh, that's Jackie's creation. She broke her bed. We fixed it. And then she took the spare wooden parts and made that. And it says, I don't know if you can see it, it says, can't fix stupid. It sounds an awful lot like you. It sounds like one of your
Yeah,
many things.
that's right. Well, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to see you this year, Jim.
Oh, well,
you know,
we'll
obviously,
make it
all
happen as
these
soon as
events
we
that
can.
occurred in the
We're
last several months have not been enjoyable at all. But
well, we're
next
so
year.
happy to see that you're doing well. I mean, you look like your old self. I hate to see what you did to the car. That's what.
Oh man, I'll tell you. You know, broken shoulder, broken pelvis, broken ribs, vertebrae. I was really lucky that I had no head trauma. The rest of my body took a real serious whack, but I was lucky. So, yeah, my neighbor out here in Ann Arbor had an accident where he had head trauma, and he's never, 10 years ago, he's never been the same. So I was lucky.
Yeah, well, you taught us to enjoy every minute.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday, buddy. We wish
Okay,
we
take
love
care.
you. We miss you, and please give our love to Linda.
Yeah, and please pass on our comments and best wishes to Dawn and the kids.
Will do. Thank
So
you.
Jim is another one who married an OR classmate. So.
Cool. All right, Jack. Enjoy your weekend.
Take care. Yeah.
All right, folks, I actually have to go too. It's 11:11. It's time for me to turn into a pumpkin. So I need to head out as well. Jack, I really do hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it.
What a way to spend your birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, with people who meant so much to you over time and who contributed so much to my life. So
it's just it really is a testament to the back and forth, both giving and what they received. It's amazing. So congratulations to you and the family. You take care of yourself. And hopefully we'll see you back in Ithaca soon.
Okay, take care. Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.